Well, afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. And I think we're going to have a very good in-depth discussion about VR, gaming, and health. This is my first Games for Change. I really want to thank Cezara for inviting and having me. I've been wanting to come to this conference for a few years now. We're going to try to allocate 5 minutes towards the end for questions, so I encourage you to think about them. Just before I go into this, I want to share that, so I'm a longtime video gamer. A big part of my growing up, I started with an Atari 2600 when I was 9. I was big onto Apple IIe and the Ultima series, if some of you know that, with Lord British. And I love console gaming. I've got PlayStation 4, Switch, thinking about another Xbox, but we're going to move into this. Okay. So just quick background about me. My background is 25 years of engineering and IT. Worked for both large and small companies. I had a dream job for 10 years, was global director of IT for a large conservation nonprofit, and conservation is still very near and dear to me, and interesting to explore how VR education can serve that. I started a media company a little bit by accident 10 years ago, now this month, and called the Cool Twitter Conference. It was the first social media conference on the East Coast. I launched the only print magazine about social media. So print magazine about a digital application, and a lot of people look cross-eyed, but it did pretty well. We had 3 years of publications and global distribution. And that's really what led into the VR. When the Oculus came out, the Kickstarter, and then getting acquired by Facebook. So from 2016 through the end of last year, pretty much, have been experimenting and doing different conferences and different verticals within VR, and trying to see where the interest has been. VR in higher ed, VR and architecture. We've done some VR and gaming events online. But we did our first VR and healthcare event 2 years ago in Washington at GW Hospital, and it got a lot of interest. And so for the last couple of years, really been focused on building that, and now in the last 18 months, and just a couple months ago, formally launched this association to support the growth of the VR and healthcare market. And very excited about it. We launched it with 40 organizations, and a couple of them are here today. It's challenging. Getting something to the healthcare to market is much different from other markets. It takes the ecosystem between startups, companies, providers, payers, and the hospitals. One thing I'm going to briefly talk about, because we are talking about aging, is I've learned a lot about the longevity market over the last year. And you know, the US population, those over 50, are the largest cohort over the next 15 years. And just something to think about is there's a huge opportunity for developers with VR and training of older Americans. A lot of people are focused on educating younger people and current workers, but this older generation is going to have to work, whether we like it or not, to cover our expenses. And there's a huge need for job retraining, and I think there's a great opportunity within VR. I'd love to see a state pilot program happen with this. Walter Greenleaf yesterday gave a great shout out for a couple conferences we have coming up over the next 12 months. He's been a great partner in helping develop a lot of this. We have our next virtual reality day, which is a focus day of education for the public. It'll be our third one coming up later this November. Encourage you to get involved. Games are a large aspect of that. And just to end this, two recent quick thoughts. One is the Oculus Quest is fantastic. I've had now for about 3-4 weeks. I think it's a game changer product. I think it's something that could take VR mainstream. It's affordable. It works great out of the box. Can Facebook market it well? I think that's the big question. And then there's also a company organization out of Washington that is looking at VR in healthcare from the patient side, looking at focused on advocating for patients for the application of VR in healthcare. And she's actually funding small projects. If you're thinking about something, look up Empower 360 Foundation. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Cezara from AARP.
Thank you, Bob. And I'm just going to grab this and go back at my seat and talk from here so you don't hear me twice. And also, I think many of you, I kind of recognize a lot of faces. Many of you were here yesterday, right? Quick show of hands. All right, so I'm going to try to be brief on everything that I've already said. As you know, I'm Cezara Windrem. Whenever my slides are ready, you're going to see some of the same you did yesterday. I'm with the AARP Innovation Labs. And slides? No, not yet? Okay, let's give them a second. There we go. So, as many of you know, AARP is a social mission nonprofit organization serving over 100 million people. We have 38 million members, and our mission is to empower people to choose how they live as they age and be everyday innovators in aging. Our work really ranges from all things advocacy and policy to a full spectrum of products and services, and that includes media in all publications and games. So thinking about the old school print all the way to, web and mobile and now virtual reality. Thinking about print, our printed magazine is the #1 most read in the United States. And through our work, we're trying to engage the ecosystem to innovate. We're innovating across all portions of our organization, but particularly a few years back, the organization set up the Hatchery, or AARP Innovation Labs, which is the hub for all things innovation. We work with the ecosystem of startups and academia and companies of all sizes, as well as experts across the board to scope and co-create new products and services for the future, and then bring the best solutions to market and to scale. One such example of an innovation that I talked more in depth yesterday afternoon about is Alcove. We've built it in the labs as an immersive media platform of curated content that takes into account the needs and considerations of an ageless consumer. And Alcove's mission is to bring together the family connection and the VR ecosystem. So that meaning all of you. Really the premise behind Alcove is that I strongly believe immersive media and spatial computing can be relevant for much wider audiences than they are today. I mean, through VR and AR, we can bring people together and augment life at every age. It doesn't have to be limited for the young, even though a lot of the commercial solutions that we're seeing in the market today are geared towards the younger generations. And it makes sense. You have to start from somewhere, but there's so much more opportunity across the board. And through a lot of the research that we've done at the AARP, as well as these experts across the industry, we realized the opportunity is so much bigger than we think. And there's so much more that we can do from health and wellness to really across the board everything, but be inclusive and build with everybody in mind. Anyways, I have a quick trailer to show. And there's no sound? So it's simple and accessible virtual reality that is built at scale, at human scale. It invites you in a space that feels comfortable and built for you. And then as you start navigating it, you discover the magic that awaits in VR. And we've built it with the intergenerational family in mind. So people across all age groups can find each other in VR regardless of where they live in the world. And kind of focused on the main 4 areas. That's through our research we learned that are critical and highly relevant for this audience. Those being, well, entertainment and games, travel, which is huge in VR, health and wellness, another one, and of course, family. And I can talk more about that, but I want to pass it to Kerry, right?
Perfect.
Great. All right. So I think my slides are also going to pop up here in a second. Let's see. Yeah, so we'll just wait for those. Hello, everyone. My name is Kerry Shaw. I am a public health educator. I'm a medical illustrator, and I'm the CEO and founder of Embodied Labs. So Embodied Labs is a company that I founded based on some personal experience, and I actually brought my earliest prototype of Embodied Labs with me today. When I was in my teens, my mom started having some health changes. And then as I got into college, I was actually a freshman in college, and she was in her late 40s, and she was finally diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. My sisters and my dad, we became part of my mom's family caregiver team for the next about 12 years that she lived. And I actually came home in my mid-20s to be caring for her right around the time that we needed more help than what my dad and I could provide for my mom. And so I was thrown into really understanding what we call the aging crisis today, in that I saw firsthand that when you're hiring CNAs, certified nursing assistants, to work at home as a home health aide, they turn over really quickly. Retention is really hard. I learned that the pay rates are really low. And I also learned that not only was I not really sure how to be a family caregiver for my mom, but CNAs had very little to no training. And so these goggles were something that I made because my mom, in addition to her Alzheimer's disease, had a right brain atrophy. And so I would always have to explain with every new caregiver that came, wasn't, that she couldn't see out of the left eye like this, but the left halves, and all these words. But then if we could put on these goggles, we could actually see through my mom's perspective, and we could intuit that it was, the left side of her body that we always had to watch out for and protect, and that if she was going to see us and we weren't going to startle her, we should approach from the right. And then she would do this at mealtime. She'd eat exactly half of her plate of food, so we'd have to remember to rotate it if she was going to finish her meal. And so through something like this, we were able to understand my mom's disease and condition better. We were able to change our care practices to be more effective care providers, and then we felt more confident and empowered as a part of her care team. And so I never would have expected that I'd be sitting here in front of you today talking about my tech startup, but I was introduced to VR when I went back to grad school in medical illustration. And I asked this question for my research thesis. I said, how could we step into the perspectives of others, or even into our roles as caregivers, and be better equipped to do our jobs? And so what we do today is we use immersive technology, the VR headset, linked with natural hand tracking, and we use theories of embodied learning and embodied cognition, and we put caregivers into different perspectives of older adults. All of our labs are built in the same way you would build a medical illustration. So we do research by interviewing hundreds of subject matter experts, including patients living with the diseases and conditions we create and build simulations for, their care teams and medical experts. And we build interactive scripts and storyboards that put you into 5-minute learning modules encompassed by a curriculum that let you actually learn about Parkinson's disease through the eyes of a Muslim American woman who's aging from her home into a care community, or what it's like to have a terminal cancer diagnosis and have to make decisions about your end-of-life care. or journey through early, middle, and late stages of Alzheimer's disease. So we use the YVR to put caregivers into places they can't go otherwise. So they embody ages, genders, and races that are different than their own. And they also go inside the body and actually watch a disease process like Alzheimer's or macular degeneration unfold around them so that then they can connect that with the first-person perspective. And then kind of complementary to our programs that we create, we also have a role-playing engine where you then flip perspectives and actually practice things like what you need to do to calm someone down who's agitated and pacing, or how to practice having that end-of-life conversation with a family, or how you practice maybe taking the car keys away from someone before that happens to you in real life. So to date, we've had a lot of really great support, including being a part of the AARP's Innovation Lab, winning first place in their National Caregiving Innovation Challenge, was connected with this conference initially through some of our work we did as an EdSim Challenge finalist. And then we are now really scaling the company and not only serving B2B, business to business in senior care organizations, but starting to go more horizontally out to verticals that interface with older adults. So if you think about bankers or people developing products for the older adults, these are all industries that really need to understand who they're serving, and we're seeing some great traction being able to scale there. So I'll leave it at that and pass it along. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Heather Leutwyler. I am an associate professor in the School of Nursing at UCSF. I'm also a board-certified nurse practitioner, and I came into video games kind of recently. I'm definitely not a game developer. Quite excited to be here. I will tell you about my program of research where we have been using video games to improve physical activity and provide physical activity opportunities for people with serious mental illness. So if you're not aware, people with schizophrenia, which is one of the most severe types of serious mental illness, tend to have really low levels of physical activity. And we also know that people with schizophrenia live on average 10 to 25 years less than somebody without a serious mental illness. And part of this can be attributed to the low physical activity levels. We also know that even short periods of physical activity can positively improve mental and physical health outcomes. So you might be wondering, why is it that physical activity engagement is so difficult for somebody that has a diagnosis of something like schizophrenia? The side effects of psychiatric medications tend to be really sedating. The symptoms of the illness, so paranoia and apathy, can make it hard for people to be active. We did a focus group study with older adults that have schizophrenia, and one of the things one person told us is, I want to be active, but I have a lot of conditions that I need to be cautious of, and I don't want to make things worse for myself. So he said, I'm no longer a spring chicken. You really have to think about tailoring a program to meet my needs. Some people tend to be reluctant to attend community activities, partly because of their illness, and then also because sometimes it's cost prohibitive to join gyms, and the psychiatric symptoms as well can make it difficult to engage in community activities. So given all of these constraints, we wondered if video games might be the answer. And the reason we thought this is that we could potentially bring something like the Microsoft Xbox Connect video game system to a mental health facility and provide an opportunity for people to do active video games. In every mental health facility that I've ever worked in, there's always been a television, so it seemed like it was pretty accessible to just bring an Xbox and set it up and have people start playing games. There's no special athletic attire required. It's an appealing way to start exercising, and you can do novel activities in a safe environment. So I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and driving to Tahoe is about a 3.5-hour drive, but for my patients that maybe don't have access to a car or limited finances, it can be difficult to get to Tahoe. But on the Xbox, they can do skiing and kind of experience what it's like to go skiing in a really safe place. So we did a couple of different feasibility and acceptability studies to see if we could bring in the Xbox Connect video game system to different mental health facilities. And we found that the staff were really receptive to it, the patients were really having fun. Recently, we conducted a one-group pre-test, post-test study with 26 participants. They were all older and have a diagnosis of serious mental illness. About half the sample had schizophrenia. And we did assessments at 5 and 10 weeks of the program. 3 times a week for 15-minute sessions, people played active video games. So we did dance, we did bowling, we did skiing. 1 day a week was aerobic, 1 day was sort of strength and flexibility, and 1 day a week we focused on games that did balance. And we found that people's mental health symptoms improved over the course of the program, and that also their walking speed significantly improved. So this was promising to see that this was really a great way to get people active and moving and improve their mental health as well. I just wanted to share one quote from the end of the program focus group. One participant said, "I knew I was exercising, but I was also having fun. And that made me look forward to the next day and the next day. And then, like I said, for my arthritis, coming down here would eliminate me having to do other things because I was always down here exercising 3 days a week. It was really, really good fun." So it was a great way to get people interested in exercise and staying exercising. And then our next step is to combine our physical activity program with standard smoking cessation counseling. So doing sort of counseling and medication along with the exercise to see if this helps people to stop smoking. And that's what we've been up to.
Well, guys, thanks very much. Those great introductions and perfect timing. Every 5 minutes each, how if you practiced. Cezara, I want to begin with you because last night we were talking and preparing a little bit, and you actually had a little bit of a concerns before about the title of the session, and I think aging better. Can you maybe share a little bit about why that's not a great title?
Not that it's not a great title, but we all think of aging as something that, oh gosh, somewhere far in the future. But the reality is we all start aging from the day we're born. It's part of growing up. It's just a natural part of life. And who are we here on stage to tell anybody else that you can age better than you already do, right? Though, I mean, in all truthfulness, definitely, employing solutions that can enhance the way you do things is a positive thing. So nothing negative there, just the whole thing about aging is sometimes we overthink it and we give it different connotations.
So would the mention of in the slide spring chicken not have been necessarily among AARP's vocabulary?
Not necessarily, I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong way to age.
Right.
I think is part of the way we think about it in gerontology is that we're all aging, and
Fair enough.
the whole idea of successful aging is sort of implies that there's this bar you have to reach,
Yep.
and I think we're all aging.
What was you said it was an older cohort. What was the age range for your?
So the average age for our sample was 59, and I probably should have addressed this because sometimes I say this and people think that's not older. But for people with serious mental illness, since there is a shortened lifespan, we tend to lower the age cutoff to 55 and above for our studies because then they physiologically tend to look like it's 65.
Okay, but a slightly older population. Mm-hmm. And can you maybe share a little bit about what it is chemically or about schizophrenia that causes a more sedentary lifestyle?
So I think some of it is the structural constraints to the care system that people with serious mental illness tend to live in. That, one of the first places I worked was a locked 90-bed facility, and people physically could not leave the facility to go exercise. So if they wanted to be active, it was just kind of pacing around the facility. So some of it is that. But then also the medications can be really sedating. So even if somebody's kind of wanting to get active, it's sometimes really physically difficult because they're just so sedated from the medications. And that can be changed as well. I mean, I think we can prescribe better so that people aren't as sedated. But it is definitely challenging, and video games make it a little bit easier and more appealing to start exercising.
Fantastic. Cezara, I hadn't seen the video of the alcove. I don't know if you showed that yesterday, but I may have missed that clip. It looks fantastic. I don't know. Is that the Oasis? Is that?
That's what we've built so far. We've launched it at the Consumer Electronics Show in January at CES in Las Vegas. It's only been out there for, less than half a year. And it's currently in beta or early access. We hope to keep adding to it, right? But it kind of came from this idea of there's a lot of opportunity. There's definitely a lot that the industry is doing on more of the enterprise side or heavy medical side, right? but not as much on the consumer end, where most of the consumer applications today are geared towards the younger age groups, the younger audiences. And while there's opportunity to create solutions that can be relevant for all, of course, when you're a game developer and you're in your 20s, you're gonna build for yourself and for your peers. So we realized that we can actually take an active role in engaging the ecosystem of developers, engaging the ecosystem of content creators, and building this platform to put it out there for them. So if they are attracted to building something that's beyond just a simple shooting zombies game, as fun as that is, or a roller coasters kind of experience, let's do it together, and we can actually provide this platform for them to be part of it and build on Alcove and kind of leverage Alcove to connect with their audience, and the larger audience than just the regular early adopters of a new technology like VR.
So you said it's an early access. Is it to a select beta group, or can people download it today?
Not at all. It's commercially available. It's out there on the Oculus Go App Store. Any one of you, if you have an Oculus Go at home, can go get it. We started on the Go because of its more attractive price point. It's mobile. You don't have to invest a lot in technology to get it. And through our research, we learned that a lot of people would be willing to spend a bit of money to get a headset for a dear family member, like for my mom or for my grandmother. I don't know if I would take $1,000 out of pocket for a gift for them, but more of the mobile headsets are quite there.
So it's been out for 6 months now. Has any learnings yet about what's working,
huge.
what's not working well?
Absolutely. I mean, people love it. That's probably the biggest learning, the kind of feedback that we're getting. Currently in the App Store, we're rated at 4.5 stars out of 5, which is amazing. We're getting emails from people and reviews that they leave where they're telling us how they're using the app, and that's huge for us because we can take that back and share with you all. I mean, for example, this one lady wrote to us about how she tried to show VR in the past to her elderly mother, who, by the way, is 99 years old. And she got a little confused and overwhelmed, and then came Alcove, and she took VR again to her mother, and she showed her Alcove, and then she put one headset on her head and one headset on her mother's head, and they connected together, and they went in, and they saw the Library of Congress, and then they swam with the dolphins, and they walked around the house, and how amazing that was. And just as I was reading her review, I was just thinking how wonderful this lady is if her mother is 99. I mean, she's quite young at heart too, right? Probably. So that is just super motivating to keep going and keep growing it.
That's great. Kerry, in the green room, we're talking a little bit about your product, and it sounds like you didn't necessarily design with gamification in mind, but you kind of maybe naturally put those aspects in it. Can you talk more about that, and now how you're thinking about gamification for future products?
Yeah, I think gamification is definitely one where we can use to describe interaction in an immersive environment. When I was designing our initial prototypes, I was really interested in Jeremy Bailenson work at Stanford with the Virtual Human Interaction Lab, and got really invested in learning about what embodiment means, and specifically how we design training experiences in immersive environments. And there's actually criteria that there's a body of research around for embodiment that says if you feel immersed in an environment, so you actually feel like when you're in the headset, you're in whatever environment it's placed you in, you feel present there and you have a sense of self-association, then those 3 criteria will satisfy a strong learning environment and then lead to actual transfer of learning and skills in the real world. And so part of it is like your brain. So your brain's really defined by your environment and everything around you. And so the things you do in the virtual environment can be read as actually happening to you in real life. And so that's where you get this expanded reality opportunity. And so I think rather than thinking about it as gamification, we've always just thought about it as, does it satisfy the embodiment criteria? That's why we've always used natural hand tracking, which means like we project your hands into the environment, so you're actually seeing your own hands as they are here, but they're moving as another. And that really leads to, when you're looking at implicit bias or even just having a meaningful experience where you feel like you have agency in the world, those are things that we know we have to have there if we're going to answer that why immersive question and really see the outcomes we're looking for. So I don't know if I directly answered your question, but we love thinking about embodied theory and then really giving people the experience of agency in the world, both with not only their hands, but their voice and their gesture and their gaze. And we're always trying to push the envelope on how far we can build those kinds of solutions with what's out today. So we're building like the evergreen things that will never really expire as the technology grows and becomes kind of more advanced.
Can you share a little bit, if you can, about some of your the client reactions in terms of learning retention and also employee retention? If I understand, it's been helping a lot with that.
Yeah, so on our platform, we measure a few things. We look at knowledge transfer, so what did you learn about a disease or a caregiving experience. So like I learned more about the brain. I learned how Alzheimer's disease works, what a neuron is. I learned how visuospatial challenges change as you advance with Alzheimer's. We look at caregiver behaviors. So we say pre and post, what will you do now that you've been through these embodied learning modules? So people will say, I thought about how the environment felt when I was being crowded and when sound and noise was more, I guess I was more sensitive to that, and now I will make sure my environment for my residents is quieter. Or I will, another one we see a lot is, I will remember to have conversations with someone instead of about them, because they felt what it was like to be in that position where the room was talking about you rather engaging with you about your care. And then more globally, we've if you look at the labor crisis, we know that better training is one big component that leads to better retention, lower turnover. And if you make that training in a way that also gives the providers opportunities to advance their career, so we Embodied Labs certify caregivers so that they have a skill set in using immersive tech. And if you give them that recognition and then correlate that back to a pay raise, all these things can holistically really impact the way that an organization can hold on to their employees longer and attract better workforce. And so we started to measure now that we have clients that have been on board for 18 months is kind of our longest, but average we have some power users at 12 months. And we're saying, look back at your 90-day retention and your 12-month retention rates. What do they look like compared to pre-embodied labs? And we're starting to see some of those impact and changes there.
Okay, great. Heather, the study that you worked on, was that the first use of games in something like that you've done?
Yes, I was saying before that I was definitely not a game designer. Video games were really, aside from like playing Nintendo growing up as a kid, I really kind of came into video games as a solution to a problem of how do I get my patients to exercise, how do I make it accessible, and one of my colleagues said, well, I'm having a lot of fun playing Xbox Connect with my niece and nephew, why don't you try that? And so I did some sort of pilot testing at home with my kids, and I was like, we could totally bring this to different facilities, and then brought it in to the patients. And they had so much fun, not only playing the games, but playing the games together. And I think, especially when you think about illnesses like schizophrenia, sometimes social isolation is a big problem, and this is a way to get people to connect with each other in kind of a safe environment. And they get really competitive too. Like I was surprised at how competitive they got with the games and how much they enjoyed seeing their scores go up, and the good-natured competitiveness that they had with each other was really kind of fun to see. So,
as you're planning your next study with the smoking cessation, is there some things you've learned from the first study that you're going to incorporate from the games aspect?
I think So smoking is a huge problem for, people need to not smoke, right? And it's hard to get people to stop smoking. People with serious mental illness tend to smoke more than other populations, partly because tobacco companies unfairly target them. So we know that counseling helps with smoking cessation, medications help, but if you exercise, it kind of pushes that over the hump and helps people really stop smoking because it helps kind of fight some of the cravings. So we are taking really just off-the-shelf video games that we used in our previous studies and applying it to the smoking cessation trial. My wish is that we could have games that were more tailored to my patients' needs. I think some of the dance games don't really kind of fit like the musical genre that they want to dance to. So that's one complaint I often have is patients say, I don't like any of this dance music. If you could find music and dance that I did before and that I could do now, then I would really enjoy that more. So I don't know that we're not really so much changing the protocol as much as it is that we're thinking more about like what are other games that we could play. And the control group in our smoking cessation study will do seated video games. So I'm also kind of going out and trying to figure out what else can we do besides like Sonic Hedgehog. I'm sure there's more, but I think it's just kind of branching out to learn more about. I just need to play more video games, I think is what it comes down to.
So I want to make sure we have a few minutes for do we have any questions in the audience? No. Can I get a show of hands? How many of you are developers? So probably about 50% of the audience. So Kerry, I mean, this is your, if I remember in Berkeley, this is your 6th year or more than that in the business?
This is actually my third year since we incorporated and kind of 4 years since we started.
4 years. I mean, so you've been at it a while, and any advice for developers, in the audience that are, trying to get that first client or, find some traction?
How many are students as well as developers? Okay. So I really love that being a grad student and being able to ask questions and take some risks was really what led to this company. I would have never gotten as far as I did without having a couple years of being a student to pursue kind of a wild idea. I mean, like, I've started with these. I didn't know anything about technology or VR, and so I think that kind of environment breeds a lot of creativity. For developers, look at the why, the need before the technology, and find clients that have a problem to solve that doesn't, I guess that the answer is the technology.
Cezara, what challenges do you face to scale up Alcove?
Challenges are kind of what we need in order to grow and keep moving. Pretty much so far, every challenge that we've encountered, we looked at ways of actually turning it into opportunities, breaking down the barriers. Like, there's significant challenges with the VR technology in the industry as we know it today that kind of stand in the way to further democratization of these new technologies. And these are awareness, perception. A lot of adults are looking at these things as something for the young, something for kids, or many things think or believe that it's going to make them sick because it did maybe 5 years ago when they tried something on a cardboard, or just because all they hear about it is those fun adrenaline-driven games, such as shooting zombies kind of experiences and whatnot. So these are indeed challenges, but when you look at them, that's also your opportunity. That's also your opportunity to turn them upside down and say, no, we can do better than this, right? Kerry was talking about embodiment, which is this ginormous opportunity that virtual reality is giving our world today. And when we're looking at it only from the limited spectrum of we can simulate things, that's great. It's not limited, it's wonderful. We can use it for training, we can use it to create enterprise simulations to get employees prepared for certain situations, that's great and wonderful. But also think that beyond that and beyond just simple, fun video games, we can also use this technology to simulate life, simulate real life. as we're talking about the idea of aging, right? What's aging? It's life itself. So yes, as we grow older, some of our, physical mobility might decrease, our I guess, excitement, our physical abilities to go and travel the world might change, right? Through something like virtual reality, we can bring the world closer to us. We can simulate things that we might not be able to achieve in real life necessarily. So for example, taking a trip to Paris, right? We had this one user one time who spent her honeymoon with her husband in Paris, and then she revisited that same city in a beautiful tour through VR, through alcove, and she almost started crying because her husband is now not able to get out of the house, stuck in a wheelchair, rarely even going out, does not want to travel anymore, and she felt like for the first time again they can travel together and they can do something while not involving the full physical abilities of the body. The brain is still there, and the way we perceive reality in VR is almost as close as the real thing, right? Of course, nothing will ever compete with reality, but immersive media is the closest that we've seen through the spectrum of all media we've had over the many decades that is coming to a closest to reproduce reality as we know it.
That made me think as well. I think it also opens up the world, and provides opportunities that people might not otherwise engage in. And for some of my patients, like I had one participant that really wanted to go out in the community and do Tai Chi. Often in Golden Gate Park, people are just sort of impromptu doing Tai Chi, and he was so nervous to try that. But then we did it on, I think it was like the Connect Sports DVD. And then it gave him the confidence to say, I'm going to go try that class in the park. So it opened the doorway to say, okay, now I did this in the safe space, I can go out and do it in real life. And I think that inclusivity is great.
Kerry, as someone who is hustling every day and selling and talking in front of clients, is the hardware, is everything affordable enough today? Is it work good enough? Is it where it needs to be for the market to grow, or are there a couple things that still the industry needs to focus on?
I think it depends on who you're selling to. We've had really great success. Initially, we wanted to only deal with software. We're primarily a software company. But we've started selling a turnkey kit that we've done things to that isn't completely on the market anywhere else. And so by basically we don't just think about VR, we think about the entire end-to-end experience from the time someone has to engage with the hardware, but not even the hardware, the training solution itself. And I think, it's ready for market. We're selling into a tough market with small margins, and we're getting pretty great traction because the end of the day, it's about the bottom line, and if you can tie it back to ROI, whether it's turnover and retention or better patient safety, whatever it is, that should outweigh the expense of where the hardware is today, and it's only going to get better from here.
And I guess, cost of hiring employees and retaining them versus new hires, not cheap, and so I guess it's not a low bar to meet to demonstrate the value and the effectiveness.
Yeah, you can look at the cost of one employee turning over, and I think a new study came out through Harvard Business Review that said it costs $157,000 per turned over healthcare employee in the nursing care space, and that kind of takes into account not just their salary, but a lot of factors of what that one employee is impacting. So if you take $150K per employee and look at what it costs to invest $2.5K in a kit, and maybe 5 of those kits, and you say, well, if I can lower my retention or increase my retention or lower my turnover even 15%, then I've more than met that kind of ROI. And then if the technology can do more than that, like we've also had our customers use this as a way to educate family caregivers. So they bring in the community and say, here's a tool to educate you who may be giving care as well and may need more of our services. And so then another metric has been to say, well, could we actually bring in more people in sales to be using our services? And so it starts to become a no-brainer, and you can actually make a pretty fast case to just put it in your OpEx and go. So I think that's on us too for maybe advice to developers is we can't think too much just about like what we're making. It has to fit into an ecosystem and always tie back to somebody's bottom line, because you'll always be winding up talking to like the chief financial officer, and that's really what they're gonna wanna know.
Great. Cezara, I'm going to let you have the last word. If people in the audience, developers, want to try to get involved in Alcove, submit something, I don't know if you guys are building a store or a way for people, how should they go about that?
There's a website up for it, alcovevr.org, .com, alcovevr.com, with all the contact information. Also, Susanna and I announced yesterday plans for a VR challenge that Games for Change is going to be putting together, probably starting next year in January. More details will be coming later. Everybody can go to gamesforchange.org and sign up to receive information as they become available. Aside from that, since there's more than half of the room here, developers, one big advice that I would have for you all is be inclusive in your development and think of the entire, of the whole audience out there, of the entire population of this country and the world when you're building. And keep that in mind because the opportunity is there. And if you're thinking, in terms of who you're building for, but also in terms of value and economic perspectives, just think that the longevity economy, as some in the industry are talking about it, it's huge. People over the age of 50 spend and generate an approximate $7.6 trillion a year in expenditure. And put in kind of more tangible, think that for every $1 spent in the United States, 51 cents are coming from a person 50 plus. And in just a few years, that expenditure towards technology products and services will sum up to around $84 billion a year. And beyond that, we also know from research that more than 70% of adults, older adults, engage with their grandchildren through technology. So why not? Why just build for the young when we can build for everybody and be inclusive?
Well, great note to end on. We're now actually, but thank you, Heather, Kerry, Cezara, for joining me today. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.